Welcome in. This is season 5, episode number 29 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix race preview show. We are proud members of the Ship It Studios podcast network, as always. And you've got Andy, and I'm along with my wonderful preview co-host, Mr. Cody, tonight. Sir, it is good to see you yet again. We had a week off. I hope you did some fun things during that week off, and good to see you, sir. How's it going?
Going great. Yeah, I did some fun stuff, some hanging out with family and friends, going out for a little bit of wine tasting, which is fun. But definitely ready to get up extremely early and watch some racing around Singapore.
Yeah, we were comparing in the preview show time, and when we get there, it's going to be by the dawn's early light. The sun will be rising while it is setting in Singapore for us here in the U.S. But the good news is I looked at the Friday times, and it's not going to interfere with my job, so I'm happy with that. So I'll always take the earlier start time. When it used to be Russia, that used to be even worse. Russia was an hour earlier than this one was. So that one was always a pain in the neck. But anyway, we will get into all that in just a little bit. You can find our show, as always, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and, of course, YouTube. At Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, welcome. Thank you for watching. And if you do happen to like what you're seeing or like what we're saying, click the like or subscribe button if you'd like to do that. If you're on your favorite podcasting app, if you click the 5-star button, all that does is help us get our content to you that much quicker. Lets us come up a little bit better in search results when people are trying to find F1 content. So we would be most appreciative if you'd like to do that. You can email our show, chatnow@outlapf1.com. We'll take you there. You can check out the website, www.outlapf1.com would take you there. Just as always, shout out to our monetary supporters, including Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of what we call the hashtag Outlap F1 Nation, you can see our link. You can see it on our link tree. You can find on our show notes the Anchor support page, $1, $5, whatever you'd like to do, all goes into making the show better, investing in new equipment, upgrading the equipment that we currently have. So it all goes into, we're not making any money from this, at least not yet. So we would be appreciative of anything you'd like to give. You can also check out our recurring sponsor, the good folks at Manscaped. You can use our code OUTLAP, that's OUTLAP, get 20% off and free shipping from their very nice product line that you can check out. And if you'd also like to check out our buddy Vincenzo Landino, he has a F1 shirt line at the F1guy.com, F1 quality merch for not necessarily the F1 quality prices, which is hard to find nowadays. Trust me, I can tell every time I go to search F1 merch. It's just astounding how expensive some of it is. But I guess that's what we do here with the sport. So anyway, we will hop into the news before we get into the Grand Prix weekend. And we have to start off a little bit with some unfortunate comments made by senior advisor to the Red Bull Racing Organization, Helmut Marko, following the Italian GP. Don't like to talk about stuff like this, but the guy basically went off and opened his mouth and let a lot of weird stuff come out of it, saying, with respect to what he said about Sergio Perez, he said that, quote, Perez was less focused than some other drivers because of his Mexican heritage. Quote, we know he has problems in qualifyings. He has fluctuations in form. He is South American, which Perez is not, and he is just not as completely focused in his head as Max Verstappen or Sebastian Vettel, according to what Marko said through a translator from Reuters. Yick. Cody, on the surface of this, why do they let this guy keep talking when all this weird bad crap comes out of his mouth?
It's not a good look for him, and it does seem like every time you see a headline about Helmut Marko, you kind of roll your eyes and go, God, what the hell did he say this time? Doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut. And this time, definitely came across as pretty ignorant. Any indication that Perez's performance, whether it's going up or down, would be based on his heritage is not going to be accurate and not going to be something good to say, especially to the masses. The part about calling Perez South American cracks me up a bit. Obviously, Mexico is not part of South America. We're very familiar with that, considering we have Mexico as our neighbors to the south. I could not help but feel, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, that if it was that part alone, you could chalk it up to ignorance. There's a lot of people on the side of the pond who couldn't point out Austria on a map. So, if Helmut Marko just didn't know where Mexico was on the map, fine, sure. Ignorant, but that part could be construed as harmless. But to say that any bit of Perez's performance would be due to his heritage is clearly wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's no defending this. There's no. I don't even get it anymore. I mean, this is not the first time this has happened. There's been several incidents that he said weird things about Sergio Perez. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, not this past year, but the year before, where they had the attack that wasn't that far from the circuit, where he basically said, "Oh, Sergio Perez should be used to this because he's from Mexico City," where he's not, and Mexico City is a dangerous place. It's just mind-numbing why they keep putting this guy in front of a camera. You'd think you would understand it. And I understood there was a lot of backlash, and there should have been. And there was an apology that came out, which is actually kind of surprising, given the relationship between what Marko is to actually Red Bull and AlphaTauri. And even though he wears Red Bull gear, he shows up, he's in their pit box, he's there when they do podium celebrations and all that other stuff. Believe it or not, he's actually not a Red Bull employee. He's an independent advisor of what they call Red Bull GmbH or GmbH, excuse me. And he was previously only accountable to the late Dietrich Mateschitz. So that's why he's kind of had this cozy bed of basically being able to shoot his mouth off without any real consequence. And this is also why you haven't seen a Red Bull Racing statement about this, because if he's not their employee, they really can't. Because if they said something that we decried it, like we wanted everybody to do, and everybody wanted them to do, if they said that, they believe it or not, this is how screwed up the justice system is in this world. Marko could sue them for defamation. That's how screwed up that is. So that's why you haven't seen anything clear and concise from Red Bull about it. They could have at least maybe retweeted the apology when it came out. That might have been a good thing to do, but they're kind of just choosing to kind of stay away from it. And look, I'm no fan of what Marko does. The fact of the matter is, I think he doesn't like Sergio Perez because he can't control him. And Perez doesn't owe anything to Marko, Red Bull, or anything with that organization. And I think that just sticks in his craw, that he couldn't get his young drivers, any of his young driver program that he worked so hard at, to be in that second seat. And until he gets that again, I don't think he's going to be happy. And if they force Sergio out because of shit like this, it's ridiculous, it's stupid, and it shouldn't happen. But I could see it happening if Perez shouldn't have to put up with anything like that. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yeah, he shouldn't have to put up with it. But while he's putting up with it, he seems to be doing a good job. He doesn't seem to be going and complaining too much about that. This is, clearly unfair treatment from, people in the Red Bull sphere of influence. But, for what it's worth, he seems to take it in stride.
Yeah, and credit to him for being, you can't accuse him of not being a team player here, because he clearly is. But anyway, hopefully, at the end of the day, what I hope comes out of it is that Red Bull, whatever entity, gets this guy off of the camera. Just go sit down and pat on the head, nice there, and go do your thing, and stop insulting the rest of the world that doesn't agree with you. But anyway, enough about Helmut, who, and there's always, what is it? F1 is the sport where we have a guy named Helmet, and it doesn't get worn on a head. But anyway, focusing more on this week's Grand Prix, now we can actually talk about the Singapore Grand Prix this weekend. Big story going into this weekend, there are actually going to be some significant track changes to the actual layout of the circuit. And this was one of those stories that we probably talked about 8-9 months ago when they first announced it. And now we're here, and now it's all kind of, oh, wow, this is a real thing now. So the old turns, if you liked turn 16, 17, 18, and 19 in Singapore, which went, I think, was that little chicane and that little squarey section that went under. Yeah, it went under the grandstands and came out kind of in the middle. Those are gone. So if you were a fan of those sections, that's gone. It's now going to be a straight from basically the old turn 15 will now run all the way now to what was previously the old turn 20, which is now the new turn 16. None of these corners are very much named, so we have to kind of go with the numbers. So I don't have any better reference for you than that to explain through this type of medium what we're talking about. But it looks like we're going to see some really quick lap times, especially if it's dry. I've seen predictions anywhere from 8 to 12 seconds faster based on what the simulations are. And it is kind of a shot in the dark because we've never run on this configuration. So, Cody, 1, do you like the changes to it? 2, do you think it's going to improve the racing? And 3, how much quicker do you think we're going to go?
As far as how much quicker we're going to go, to me, it's shot in the dark. Like, we've got to go with what the professionals are saying about how much quicker they think the lap times are going to be. So for me, yeah, no idea. But as far as will it make the racing better and do I like the changes? Kind of a shot in the dark too. It seems to be the trend this year for reprofiling circuits to have less windy turns and more straights or more sweeping turns. We saw some of that, I believe, in Australia as well, and they're trying to do it to improve the racing. But I don't think we've really seen a super clear indication at any of these tracks where they've made these changes so far that it's not really working wonders. But at a place like Singapore where there's a lot of slow turns and passing is difficult anyway, I think having a little bit more of a straight section would probably be pretty good. It looks like it's right after a DRS section, though, so I'm not sure how much more passing we're going to see in that area, but who knows? Be worth it to see.
Yeah, I mean, it basically takes, you still have that little kink that's still turn 15, and then it goes into a hard right at now 16 and 17. So it's a hard right and then another kind of hard right to kind of loop you back into the main straight there. 16, 17, 18, 19 is basically this elongated cornery loop thing that it's there now. Hard to say whether or not it's going to really create an overtaking zone. I don't know. It's interesting that they didn't want to put a DRS zone there because that would be what I would have thought would have been maybe a natural place to put one. But there are running 3, which I thought was also interesting. The main straight between turns 5, 6, and 7, there's a DRS zone, and then there's another one between turn 13 and 14 before you get to this new section. So it definitely looks like they're trying to promote overtaking. We know that sometimes overtaking here can be a bit of a challenge, particularly as, the wear happens and you get all that clag offline and, you basically only end up with one racing line pretty much anyway. And then if you try to venture off, you're going to go for a slide, as we've seen some guys do in the past. Mainly Max Verstappen last year. He kind of went for a hell of a slide right into one of the escape roads. So, we'll have to see kind of how this works. But interesting, again, kind of one of these things that we, you kind of forget about a long time ago. And then it comes back up when we're actually here. So something to watch for. We're definitely going to see what the lap times are. If they're saying 8 to 10 seconds faster, I mean, the last time we saw that was Spain when they took off, when they took out that one chicane and you saw lap times plummet from where they traditionally were. So generally, if you make the car go in a straight line, it tends to go really fast. So we'll have to see what happens.
I'm picking up. My brain is figuring things out as we're talking here too, because earlier we were trying to come up with our lap times for our our predictions game, and Andy was talking about how much quicker the lap times were going to be, and I once again wasn't putting it together that it was because the circuit has been reprofiled. I was like, well, I think it was wet last year, right? So maybe it's just going to be 10 seconds faster because it's dry. And now we're sitting here talking, and you're talking about the times tumbling down because of that straight. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that would do it, wouldn't
it? Well, let's hope we don't have what we had at Spain, because I remember watching it in Spain and I went, well, there go our lap times. That was fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's first practice. They're on the hardest tires. And I went, that was what I thought the pole was going to be. Oh, dear. Oh, my. But we'll have to see. But anyway, it's something to watch for sure. All right. And a couple, as we move further into the Grand Prix weekend, a few teams bringing some good upgrades, and some teams running some interesting looking liveries, because this is, of course, the F1 night race. So we'll actually start with Williams. And if you forgot about this from a while ago, Williams is actually finally going to run the Gulf livery. Remember the fan vote from about 3-4 months ago? It's the bolder than bold design, which will feature on both the Alex Albon car and the Logan Sargent car this weekend. Obviously, I love the Gulf livery. I still love this hat. I think it's very cool. I wish they would have gone with the Heritage. That was my personal preference. But this one, I think, was my second choice of all the ones that they came up with. So I think it's going to look pretty cool under the lights. Cody, what's your thought?
I think it definitely looks pretty cool. I would say not as cool as the McLaren Gulf livery that was run at Monaco a couple years ago, but definitely pretty sweet. Good to see that orange and blue combo. Pretty sweet. Also wasn't my pick out of the four. I personally thought that the Visionary one that got knocked out earlier was pretty sweet looking.
Nice.
But still something different, something pretty cool. I think that the regular Williams livery is honestly one of the cooler looking ones. So it seems like, the thing that Williams is doing best right now is their liveries.
Well, they've had some good. This has been their best year in about 4 or 5 years. So maybe they could maybe they could take it and do something with it. We'll have to see. This would be one of those, like, seriously, but this would be one of those circuits where, like, they would surprise you if they did really well, because you tend to think of them as just a straight line car. But go back to a couple Grand Prix ago in Zandvoort, and there was Alex Albon doing his thing. So maybe this is one of those things where, hey, maybe this car isn't as bad as we're writing it off to. But 21 points and only going up, and it looks like they're locked in for P7. So I would love to see them do very well here in that special livery. And speaking of a team with another special livery, stop me if I've said this one time enough before, but McLaren will run a one-off livery for the next 2 Grand Prix. This will be their third one of the season. This is called the Stealth Mode livery, and it will feature for Singapore and for the next Grand Prix in Japan. If you haven't seen it, you can definitely find it online. I would say that it's the closest thing to what, if you looked at like Pato Award's IndyCar, but with more black in it. I would say that's probably your best comparison. There's definitely not a whole lot of blue. That seems to have gone away, at least for this one. So, yeah, I mean, my initial impression was I like it. And like any of these things, I always just hope it's fast.
I think it definitely looks sweet. I could not help but be slightly disappointed, because when you were telling me that it was like the Pato Award IndyCar livery, my brain processed it as the Indy 500 livery, and that car was sexy. Loved that car. The black with the little white highlights. I thought it was awesome. So I thought that's what they were doing, and I was getting super psyched. But even still, the orange and the black does look really cool. Looking forward to seeing it over the next couple of races.
Yeah, it's not as busy. It's definitely not as busy as the traditional McLaren livery, which sometimes can look like it's a bit all over the place, and sometimes it's taken my eye a little bit to get used to it. But anyway, I liked this one. I think I like this one better than I like the chrome one. I enjoyed that one, and then the combo of the 3. I wish they had one, like done it like in 3, where they did one of each livery that they smushed in together for 3 of them. Like they did one of like the IndyCar thing where they had one in the black and one in the Senna colors and one in the old school papaya. So, but this is what we ended up getting. So yeah, I mean it is pretty cool, and they are the kings of the one-off liveries. So they will be doing it yet again. So if you don't see the papaya coming, that's why you don't as much. And then one final story before we take a quick break. And before we hop into the actual track facts and our predictions, AlphaTauri has made some headlines by saying they intend to bring some, quote, Red Bull style updates to the car this weekend. And I've read in a couple of places that there's more than a fleeting rumor that they might just do this and go full RB19 next year, where whatever RB is running this year, obviously the race-winning car, the dominant car, you just take that, throw the AlphaTauri livery on it, and run that puppy next year, even without necessarily any other upgrades. Because, and you've seen this happen with like the best example I can give you is like Ducati in MotoGP, where they have customer teams, and those customer teams will literally get the previous year's spec of bike, while the works team works on its newest spec of bike. And that sometimes has brought them forward very, very quickly. I can think of a couple of MotoGP teams that have won races this year that probably in the past hadn't for a very long time, but they've gotten that formula right, it looks like, in the spec. And, you know, here, even though it's last year's bike, it's still damn pretty fast. Cody, what would be your thought on this? This is definitely not something you definitely see in Formula One. At least we haven't ever seen it, or haven't ever seen it work, let's put it that way. So it'd be kind of a new direction.
I don't see why they wouldn't do it if they have the opportunity, because, you know, Red Bull has been so dominant these last couple of years that even having this year's Red Bull next year would probably bring them up a ways from where they're at right now. I've said it before that I think this whole concept of having essentially a Red Bull B team in Formula One is not really that cool. And I think that, you know, the fact that they could use pretty much like the entire Red Bull car, you know, parts, probably design elements and stuff like that for the aero, I think it's, you know, kind of goes against the spirit of competition a little bit. So I wouldn't be really cool with it, I guess, but it would definitely help them out. They are, you know, more often than not, the slowest car right now, and they're sitting there at the bottom at the points. So anything that could bring them back up to speed would be great. I also have to imagine too that being that Red Bull, you know, sponsors them as well, it's not a good look for Red Bull if your A team is miles ahead of the competition, and then your B team that, you know, your junior drivers are in is at the complete opposite end and last with like a handful of points. So they probably want AlphaTauri to pick up the pace a little bit so they don't look like crap. I don't see why they wouldn't do it if they can.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Franz Tost allude to something like this where they said we were going to go in a different direction and that us as a complete independent entity hasn't worked. So we're going to kind of go back to like, so that they haven't said it that they're going to full do this, but I can see them. And to me, why at least they aren't taking inspiration from the best aerodynamicist on the planet and throwing the same concepts at the same car, which is the same formula that is dominating the sport right now, seems to make a lot of sense to me, at least from a performance standpoint. Now, I don't like it. I'm with you. I don't like the idea of doing that. I don't want to be seeing the same thing just retreaded and given to a lesser team, and then they artificially move up. To me, that's not what this sport is about. It should be about independent constructors figuring out their own way through a set of regulations to make the fastest cars on the planet. And that does, to me, go against that. That, to me, feels like not an actual this, but it feels like a cheat code. You know, it feels like you just enter in the thing, and now you're 5th in the constructors, where last year you were 10th. Well, did you really get there on merit? No, you just kind of slapped your own livery on top of somebody else's design and ran it. You can say that maybe other teams are copying and they do the same thing, but at least they're coming up with it in a drawing board themselves and having to go through the whole process of correlating it. Where this is already proven. If you slapped an AlphaTauri logo on Vettel's car right now, or not Vettel, on Verstappen's car right now, that thing would probably win a race or two. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but it now does. The other thing I was thinking of, this now makes the Daniel Ricciardo move make a lot more sense, right? Because if Perez is under contract next year and they don't necessarily want to put Ricciardo in that car, but you put him in an RB19 just the same, but you do it next year, can he be competitive there? And does now that whole thing that we all said didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense now start to come into focus? So something to watch. This may be the start of a something that may have some big consequences later on down the line. So something definitely to watch for. We will keep on top of it, and we will inform you as we learn more. All right. Well, we've had enough, I think, a bit of the news. So we're going to take a quick break. We are going to pay a bill or two. Then we will come back. We will get into our track facts. We'll talk about that weather, which has always been a factor around Singapore. And then we will get into, I need to get a winning streak going. I got my first win in a long time last time, so maybe I can make it 2 in a row in our predictions game. So come on back, and we will get into all that in just a little bit. All right, welcome back. This is Season 5, Episode number 29 of the Outlap F1 podcast. We are previewing the 2023 Singapore GP. We are proud members of the Ship It Studios podcast network, and as always on the previews, you've got Andy. I'm along with my wonderful preview co-host, Cody, tonight, and we are going to hop in to drop our green flag, hop into the Singapore GP track facts. They are brought to us by the good folks at Pirelli Motorsport. So, Cody, my friend, tell us about the Marina Bay Circuit.
All right. This week, the F1 Circus goes to Singapore. We are racing the Singapore Grand Prix located in Marina Bay, Singapore. This is the Marina Bay Street Circuit. Number of laps around this track, 62, and track length, possibly slightly different now with the new track configuration, but it is 4.940 kilometers. That's 3.069 miles with 19 turns now. Tire selection for this race is the C3 hard compound, C4 medium compound, and C5 soft compound. And the track characteristics is brought to you by Pirelli are as follows. We have a 4 out of 5 for traction, 3 out of 5 for asphalt grip, 3 out of 5 for asphalt abrasion, 4 out of 5 for track evolution, 2 out of 5 for tire stress, 5 out of 5 for braking, 2 out of 5 for lateral load, and a 5 out of 5 for downforce. Since we have changed the track configuration this year, we do not have a qualifying lap record or a race lap record for the current configuration. However, we have run many races around Singapore in the past. Most wins in Singapore goes to one of my favorite drivers, Sebastian Vettel, with 5 wins, followed by Lewis Hamilton with 4 wins. And in third place, we have Fernando Alonso with 2 wins. Most constructor wins around this circuit is a tie between Red Bull and Mercedes with 4 wins apiece, followed by Ferrari with 3 wins and McLaren with 1 win. What's the circuit like, Andy?
At least the music played.
You know, I was having such a hard time not cracking up.
But it was playing. All right. We've gone completely off track, off kilter here. The Marina Bay Circuit is probably the most physically demanding on the calendar. It's bumpy street surface coupled with humid conditions, giving the drivers plenty to think about. Even with a revised 2023 layout, reducing the number of corners from 23 to 19, they are still working the wheel a lot. As they go around this high-speed lap, the physical stress causes them to lose as much as possibly 3 kilograms. That's a lot of kilograms in body weight over the course of a race. So hydration is key. You'll probably hear a lot of these team engineers telling their drivers, remember to drink. It's important. As for the weather, so we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to give you the day and then the night weather because it's the night running that's the most concerning. So qualifying day sees sunshine and clouds mixed with a high of 89, so very toasty. Winds out of the southeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour. For qualifying night, partial cloudiness early with, oh, you guessed it, scattered showers and thunderstorms later during the night. Low near 80, winds out of the east at 5 to 10, a 40% chance of rain. For the race day, scattered thunderstorms in the morning, then mainly cloudy during the afternoon, with again more thunderstorms rolling through. High of 88. Winds out of the southeast at 10 to 15. Chance of rain 70%. But for race evening, looks like the rain is going to eventually stop. Considerable cloudiness, low around 80 again. Winds out of the east at 5 to 10. Only a 24% chance of rain during the race. So do we maybe see drying conditions? Interesting, gonna have to see. All right. Now let's hope it turns off. Hey, there we go. All right. Well, now that we know that it's working, maybe I can play the Mortal Kombat sound. Because that's our next thing. We're gonna go straight into, oh boy. Why can I never find anything when I want it? There we go. The Choose Your Champion Predictions game, where, again, as I said earlier, I'm trying to get a winning streak going here, but we'll see how far that ends up actually going.
I'm hoping that this is a Verstappen Perez situation where you win one and everyone thinks it's championship back on, and then I win the rest of the season.
Okay. Now I see where you're going at. I thought you were giving us a preview. I'm like, okay. So this is Miami. So I'm going to lead for about half of it, and then you're just going to, and then that's it. I'm done.
Yep, exactly.
All right. I see it. I see you. All right. Well, here we go. We will start like we do with the pole sitter. Do we have anybody other than Max? I can't do that. He's just on another level. So I'm going with Max Verstappen. Cody, what's your thoughts?
I didn't go Max Verstappen last week, and to be true, or not last week, last race, to be true, he didn't get it. But my deep call with Alonso really, really, really didn't work out. So this time I'm going to go with the safe option, and I'm also going to go with Max Verstappen for this week. I think he's going to have a good Singapore race.
All right, so no differentiation between us there.
No.
One of the things that always differentiates the two of us seems to be the lap time. And with this new layout, lap time is really up for grabs. So Lord only knows where we're going to end up here. Last year's pole time was a 149.412 in kind of drying conditions. I think we actually did see slick tires in Q3 last year. I'm going to say that 10 seconds, that sounds pretty good. That's good enough for me. So I'm going to say 139.458 and cross my fingers that it stays dry. But Cody, what's your thought?
This one's going to be a little bit of a Price is Right situation. I am just a little slower than you. I'm hoping that, it's so hard to say with this one because the forecast says might be dry, might be wet, got the faster track configuration. So I'm going just a little slower than you with a 140.001.
All right, 140.001. I feel like I've been covered off. Like I went in and tried to dive into the pits and you're covering me off. So anyway, we'll have to see where the lap times shake out. So our race prediction for last year's podium ended up being Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc. No, that can't be right. Yes, it was. It was Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, and Carlos Sainz. That's right. It was Ferrari 2 and 3. Was probably their best overall result of the season. All right, Cody, what's your thought? Who's going to take it, and what's our podium?
I think Verstappen is going to make a really good comeback at this circuit after his little bit of a stinker last year. So I got Max Verstappen taking win number 11 in a row. Followed by Sergio Perez, who I think will perform very well on the street circuit. Obviously won the race last year. And wrapping up the podium, I have Lewis Hamilton, who also is a repeat performer at this track.
All right, very good. I'm going to give Max Verstappen the win. I wish I could. It's his until somebody takes it. It's that simple. And so I'm not going to say anything there, but I am going to go full homer. I believe when Andrea Stella says they're bringing performance updates, tend to be pretty good. The last few two that he's brought, it's been really good. So I'm going to say topography suits this track a lot better for McLaren. Lando Norris to come home in P2. And I think he's going to have one hell of a scrap with another team that's going to come back this week, and that is Aston Martin. So I think it's going to be a big-time fun scrap between Norris and Fernando Alonso to come home in P3. I'd like to see Norris come out on top of that, obviously, so that's where I'm going. So that's my podium. Got Ver, Nor, and ALO for my podium. All right, so we will now get into the fastest lap, and of course the fastest driver. 2022 saw George Russell take the fastest lap with a 146.458. So Cody, where do you see the fastest lap and the driver going?
No shot in the dark here for the driver. I can go than that one to Max Verstappen. Seems to be getting the fastest lap more often than not. The time, though, is still kind of a shot in the dark. Going slightly slower than the qualifying time. Maybe not enough. Only time will tell. But I'm going with a 1 minute 42 seconds .002.
All right. I have made a last minute sub. I threw the card down right before I got cut off, so I think I made it in there. I'm going to give the fastest lap driver to George Russell, and I think he sets it with a 144.367. All right. So we will move into the bonus picks, and for this week we've selected P4, P5, and P6. So Cody, so I guess we're going with the first 6 on the grid here. How many do we get right? That'll be interesting. So what you got?
I have a pretty similar placement to you, but I haven't just missing out on the podium. I have Fernando Alonso coming in 4th. I've got George Russell. I think the Mercedes are going to be performing pretty well at this track. Hamilton is really good here, so that's why I got him up on the podium. But I got Russell coming in 5th. And then I've got the Ferraris doing okay here. I'm going to put Charles Leclerc in 6th.
All right. Well, I think Mercedes will go well here as well. I do have George Russell coming home in P4. I think I have something bad happening to poor Lewis, unfortunately, because I don't have him in my top 6. Oscar Piastri and the other McLaren. If I'm going full homer, I got to go full homer. So I got him in P5. And Carlos Sainz. Don't forget about Carlos Sainz. He tends to go well at this track. I'm remembering an old Toro Rosso P4 of his from a long time ago. So I think he goes well here. I think he will be the representative for the Scuderia. So I've got Carlos Sainz coming into P6. So I've got Russell, Piastri, and Sainz. All right. And for our prop bet, Cody, this was yours. I loved it. One of the things that always happens with this Singapore GP, it hardly ever ends on time. Usually we run out of laps and they have to switch it to the race clock, and then the race clock counts down to 0, and that's where we end it. So our prop bet is, do they make enough time up? Because obviously they're 10 seconds quicker. Do we actually end on laps or on time? And does that topography change actually help this? That's a good point. I hadn't considered that. So Cody, what's your talk? Where are you going to go with this?
That was exactly my thought when I picked laps. That's what I'm going with, and I think my train of thought here is that the lap time is going to be quicker. That's going to make a fair amount of difference over the course of an entire race, and also it looks like there's a pretty good chance that most of the race could be dry, or all of the race. So really, just so long as we don't have a ton of safety cars or red flags or anything like that, I think there's a pretty good shot that we're going to end completing all the laps.
All right. You're going to go with laps. I'm going to rely on the old, what's the percentage chance of a safety car here? I think historically it's been 100%. I don't think we've gotten through one without a safety car intervention. Of course, somebody can at me if I'm wrong about that. I'm pretty sure there's always been a lap 1 something or other at one of these throughout the course of the races. So because of that, because we always seem to have a safety car, and because those things tend to take forever, and I don't think we have a whole lot of margin going into this race, I'm going to say this thing goes to time and ends with the race clock. So we shall see. If it changes, you're getting a text from me where I just said, oh, look at the upper right, or look at the upper left of your screen. Oh, what do I see? I see a clock. We'll have to see. Anyway, so yeah, you're taking the laps, I'm taking the time, and maybe the prop bet is usually sometimes when we're close, usually tends to be the thing that separates us. So one last thing before we hop on out for the evening. When and where to watch your F1 this weekend. And it is, if you're an early riser, boy, is this weekend for you, especially if you're in the United States. FP1, bright and early on the East Coast, 5:30 a.m., 4:30 a.m. Central Time. Yikes. FP2 kicks off 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central, so you can actually have your coffee while you're watching FP2. FP3 will kick off again, 5:30 a.m. Eastern. All these so far on ESPN2. Or F1 TV, if you have a subscription to that. Qualifying, so FP3 will start 5:30 a.m. Eastern. Qualifying starts 8 a.m. Eastern. That is again on ESPN2. And the race itself, standard European time is usually 10 and 9. This is 2 hours earlier than that. So 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central. So the sun will literally be coming up while the sun is setting in Singapore. So early up. But the good news is you got the whole rest of your Sunday. You can either do the post F1 nap like I like to do, and go enjoy the rest of your Sunday because you're going to have it. So good luck and enjoy catching your F1 this weekend. All right. So Cody, any final thoughts before we hop on out for the night?
No, just kind of reliving Sebastian Vettel's last win in my head a little bit, and sorry that he's not here in that nice Aston Martin to put on a good show, but I'll take Fernando Alonso doing it.
Did you happen to see any of his lap around the long Nürburgring?
I did not.
Okay,
but I know that he was driving a car that was like all renewable or like environmentally friendly fuel, right?
Right. But it was the high-pitched screaming on the renewable fuel. F1 bosses, take a listen. Might be the way to go do this, where we can have our cake and eat it too. Just saying. I also saw there was a part of it apparently where one of the cars broke down, and I saw it leave on the back of the truck. So, but I think they ended up getting it fixed. I think he got all of the runs that they wanted to in. So. And I know that there's supposed to be a big, long interview between Brundle and Vettel this weekend in the build-up to the qualifying. So you might want to check that out. I know you're a big Vettel guy.
Very nice.
So, yeah, definitely some interesting stuff to watch for the weekend. We will monitor, of course, and try to keep everybody advised on all the happenings that go on during the course of the weekend. Obviously, if anything breaks, keep attuned to our social media. We will be back, hopefully, Sunday night. To actually record the review on time for once. Hey, look at us! But we'll have to see. This is the season of moving like water. Not sure who's all going to join me this weekend, but we will definitely do a recap of all the fun in the sun and the night of the Singapore Grand Prix. So for Cody, it's been Andy. This is always fun to do, and of course for everybody connected to the show, as always, may all your laps be fast.